Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about more career and work from home stuff. I did a quick poll on my YouTube channel and I asked you if you wanted to see another work from home type video or if you wanted to see a YouTube one, and most of you said another work from home. So today we're going to be tackling how to ask your boss to work remotely or to continue to work from home or to work from home for the very first time if you've never done it before. If you're new to my channel, my name is Tasia. I love talking about work from home life as well as careers and social media YouTube stuff. With so much talk about working from home these days, I thought it'd be really useful for those of you who are considering making the plunge into working from home full time, or those of you who might have already been working in an office but you're deciding that, hey, it looks great, I would love to try working out from home myself. And that might be a tricky thing for you to do. You might be a little bit nervous about it and might not know how to go about asking your boss or talking to your organization or your company that you work for. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips to help you be successful in pitching the idea of working from home. So my very first tip is to simply just do your research. And by that, I mean a couple of things. So you're going to want to look into your overall industry and figure out whether or not this is an industry that is welcoming to the idea of you working remotely. Some industries more than others are more open to the idea. Some of them have already been working from home or embracing remote work long before the pandemic. So definitely take a look around and figure out whether it makes sense for your particular organization. It's also important for you not to just look at your industry, but also look at your actual job position and whether or not that is also a position that typically works remotely. So for example, there are some jobs that are much more challenging to work remotely than others. If you are in charge of, for example, the mail in your organization, now that's not exactly a job you can do really efficiently from home. However, if you are a translator, now this is an excellent job that you can move into working remotely very easily and seamlessly, and it really will not affect your job performance and your productivity. The next step in this research process is to also look into your organization's work from home policy or remote work policy. Some organizations already have these in place, and many of them are working on them right now because they are looking at many people starting to return back to the office, or some people making that decision to continue to work from home. And therefore, most organizations want to have a policy in place to really kind of create the parameters under which they are comfortable about their employees or staff working from home. So there's absolutely no sense in reinventing the wheel here. If your organization already has a work from home policy, go get a copy of that and check it out, read through it, and see if it works for you, if it makes sense. If something in there is not a really good fit, maybe you might have some room for negotiations. But the positive thing is if your organization already has a remote work policy, then that means they are already open to that idea, which makes it that much more easy for you to go into that pitch meeting with your boss and really figure out whether you can make that switch. Number 3, and that is a tip around timing. So be really careful about when you're going to pitch the idea about working from home or working remotely. You really got to fill out your company and see what the vibe is about working from home, because if you had a whole slew of people recently asking for it, or if you've already heard management talking about how they are completely against it, maybe that's not the best time for you to be pitching the idea of you working remotely. So definitely ask around and have your ears to the ground and make sure that you already get a vibe and a sense of where your company stands on this issue, because some companies are far more open to it than others. As we have seen, there are giant companies who've decided to continue to work from home. For example, here in Canada, one of our biggest companies is Shopify, and they totally embrace the work from home lifestyle. They decided to send most of their entire staff home, and they are now working remotely forever. There are other organizations that are in the news that are considering wanting to have more of their staff back into the office. For example, Apple has been in the news lately because they want to see more staff in the office, and they are not necessarily buying into a work from home lifestyle forever. Ask around, keep your ears open, and get a feel already if you think that this pitch is going to be successful or not. Tip number 4 is to hold the meeting in person if you can. You might want to have this chat one-on-one because you might not know exactly where your boss stands on this issue. So having an in-person chat might really help break the ice and might help you pivot a little bit better. Sometimes having virtual calls are a little bit different in terms of trying to catch on to social cues and so forth. So definitely pitch the meeting in person if you can. If you can't, if you've already been working from home or working virtually for a very long time, then no problem. Continue to go about things that way and pitch the meeting through your typical means of working virtually. Tip number 5 is to make sure that you really come to the meeting prepared. So like I said, before you even get to this meeting with your boss, you should have already done your research in your industry. You should have already done research in your particular company. You should have already found out if you have a remote work policy, and you should already have a general plan about what you want to see in terms of you working from home and working remotely. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that plan should look like, but make sure you come prepared to lead the meeting. You take charge. It's you that's pitching this idea to your boss. They're the ones that are there to listen to this pitch and are trying to be convinced by you. So make sure you take charge right away. Stemming from tip number 5 is tip number 6, and that is having a very clear and concise plan about you working remotely. So like I said, you should have already done your research. You should already be prepared for this meeting, and you should also have a plan. So you should either have worked with the remote policy that you already have within your company. And if your company doesn't already have one, take a look at some other companies, find out what their remote policies are so that you can implement them into your plan. Show that this is not a loosey-goosey thing. You don't think this is some sort of like vacation where you're just gonna like work from home and then your boss is now not going to be able to contact you. There's not going to be a clear schedule. Your productivity is going to go down. Make sure that you're setting it out right from the get-go, that you have all of these things in mind and you have a clear plan for how you plan to execute this efficiently. So automatically go into that meeting talking about your schedule, talking about how your role will fit into the team remotely, talk about what your goals are, how you plan to overcome any challenges. Have a very clear plan so that you can put a lot of the anxiety that your boss might have about the idea of working remotely to rest. You want to make sure that you approach this really seriously with a clear plan so your boss really feels that you have a vision of where you want to go with this and how it's going to be best for them. Reassure your boss that you have a clear vision for what this is going to look like. Tip number 7, and that is remember that this is a pitch. So you really need to emphasize how this is a good situation for them. This is not all about you. Explain how this might help do your job better. Explain how this might help you be more productive. Working remotely fits a little bit better with your lifestyle, yes, but explain how this is somehow also going to have to benefit your organization at the same time. Perhaps you'll be able to focus a little bit better if you're not in the office. Maybe you can get more productivity done, more focused work. If you're doing the kind of work that you don't necessarily need to collaborate with teammates on the regular, that might mean that you're a really good fit to work remotely. Maybe you'd be able to facilitate different schedule or different work hours, and that would somehow is a benefit to your organization. For example, if you're cutting out your commute in the morning, maybe you have an hour and a half commute to work, and instead you'd be able to start now at 8 o'clock instead of at 9:30 because you no longer have that big commute anymore. You can get started to work earlier, and perhaps that's a benefit for your organization. For example, if you work in the news industry, the earlier you can start, the better, right? So if you're not wasting a whole bunch of time sitting in traffic or commuting, then that could be a good benefit to your company. Try to show that this is not just about you and that you are keeping the organization in mind and actually have a plan about how this is actually good for them as well. Let's be honest, like even if you work for a really great organization, they're still a company, they're still an organization, they have goals, they have milestones that they need to hit, right? So this can't just be about you. You have to show how this is somehow a benefit to them as well. Tip number 8 is to not avoid the downfalls. So we all know that working from home there are some great things about it. It's fabulous. There are so many great benefits, but there are still negatives to working from home. Let's not sugarcoat that, right? So make sure that you are being very clear with your organization and your boss that you know working remotely has some downsides and you're willing and ready to tackle those things. You have a plan on how you plan to overcome them. So for example, some bosses, they might not really want their teammates working from home because they feel like it's going to pull apart their team, or there's going to be a lack of communication, or they're worried that they might not be able to really monitor what you're working on and your productivity is now going to go down. So make sure that you have an outline for some of those things and how you plan to overcome them. Yes, I'm going to be working remotely. However, I'm going to set an extra meeting with you every week to check in. Go back to some stats over the last 3 months and show them how you've already been successfully working from home or how great your productivity still is, even though you're working remotely. Show maybe how you've surpassed it. If you've never worked from home, then again, point to some other organizations where they have been working from home or working remotely and it's been going really well. Some organizations, a big benefit is the fact that they require less office space. So perhaps your organization is struggling to create more room physically in an office. Maybe that's a really good time for you to pitch the idea of working remotely. Hey, if I work remotely, that's one more desk that's going to open up in the office, right? So definitely have a plan on terms of there are some negative sides, but have those positives as well, or show how you plan to mitigate the negative things. Tip number 9 is if you are actually successful, so you've done all of those steps, you've already pitched the idea and your boss is down, they're excited, you're like, okay, great, let's start working from home, then make sure that you start building trust right away. Make sure that if you're going to be working remotely, that you are not MIA, you are, logging in exactly on time, you're showing up to all of the meetings, your productivity is not suffering, you are hitting all of your milestones. Make sure you build that trust right away so your organization or your boss or manager, whoever it is, feels comfortable with that decision. You don't want to make them regret it right off the bat, right? If you head off into working remotely and in that first month, you are no-showing meetings all over the place, you seem disorganized, you're not hitting your goals, your productivity is falling, well, then you can't be mad if they're like, you know what, this is not working, you need to get back into the office, right? So make sure that right from the beginning, you hit the ground running and you are achieving everything that you would be expected to do. And you maybe need to go a little bit above and beyond. Don't burn yourself out or anything, but make sure that you are setting that really good example and making them not regret this decision. And lastly, my last tip is that if you do all of these wonderful steps, you pitch this idea and your organization is just not down for it, or your particular manager is not down for it, then have a contingency plan. Figure out if there's another thing that you can do within your organization to have some flexibility that you are hoping to get from working from home or working remotely. Find out within your organization if there's some things that you could be doing to get the flexibility you were hoping to get from working from home. And if not, if it's really not possible, then have a backup plan and think about if this is really going to be a deal breaker for you. Maybe you already have started to look into other organizations or other job postings and have that in your back pocket, or just simply decide if this is not a deal breaker for you and you just have to accept that working from home in this organization is just not going to be possible. You have to be prepared for the worst. You have to be prepared to not be successful and now not have it either completely detriment your working experience with this organization, or now you decide to just tank your productivity out of frustration, and then that's just going to cause a whole bunch of issues for you. So like I said, just have a contingency plan. Either think about something that you would also like to negotiate with your boss if they're really not down for it, or if you really need to start thinking of an exit plan because you are set on the idea of working remotely and therefore you might need to find another organization that has a better fit for you. If you're interested in working remotely and maybe your particular industry or job doesn't allow it, check out my last video. I talked about some of the highest paying jobs that were successful in the last year in working remotely. Or if you're just curious in general about the idea of working from home, check out some of my other videos. I have a number of videos on my channel sharing tips about working from home and some of my work from home lifestyle, and see if that's really something that's in it for you. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time with me today, and I will see you guys next week. So I thought today would be a really good day to talk about, I already said what we're gonna do today. I thought it would be really useful. Some industries, this computer of mine is continuously timing out. You should already found out if you had a remote, oh my gosh. Maybe you'd be able to facilitate